The red dust of San Judas clung to everything it touched. Clothes, skin, hair, lungs. Even hope could not escape it. Eliza Quinn stood at the edge of the dusty main road with her traveling case in one hand and her medical bag in the other. The stagecoach that carried her here had already vanished into the heat shimmer behind her, leaving nothing but dust swirling around her boots. At 25, Eliza had learned one truth. A new town did not erase an old past. But San Judas was her last chance to rebuild her life far from the debts her late husband left behind. She came here to heal people without fear, without whispers, without shame. But the desert had its own rules, and she was about to learn them fast. A gruff voice came from behind her. "You, the healer woman?" Eliza turned. Sheriff Coyle was a man shaped by sun and sorrow. His badge was dull, but his eyes were sharp and tired. He looked her up and down without judgment, only calculation. "I am a midwife and nurse," Eliza said, offering her hand. "Elizabeth Quinn." He didn't take it. "Heard you're settin' up near the old water station." Eliza nodded. "Is that a problem?" Quote, "Everything's a problem in San Judas," he replied. "That land belongs to Rio Seco. They own most of the water here." Her jaw tensed. "I bought it legally." In this town, legal depends on who holds the most guns. Before she could respond, he tipped his hat and walked off, leaving her with a warning that felt heavier than her bags. The boarding house sat between saloons like a prim aunt among wild daughters. Mrs. Harrington greeted her with tight lips and sharp eyes. "I know who you are," the woman said. "A widow from back east. I don't rent to troublemakers." "I deliver babies, Mrs. Harrington," Eliza said calmly. "I help people." "Last midwife brought death, not life. Folks say you're bad luck." The door shut in Eliza's face before she could answer. She stood alone in the street, heat pressing down on her shoulders, rejection clawing at her ribs. She had nowhere to sleep, nowhere to work, and no one willing to take a chance on a stranger. Then she heard hooves. 4 horses moved down the road, sleek and strong. Not the tired nags of most cowhands. These were valuable animals. Behind them rode a man who sat his horse like he was born in the saddle. Jacob Hart. Eliza didn't know his name yet, but she felt his presence long before he reached her. Dust rose behind him like a crown. His gray stallion snorted and pawed the dirt as Jacob scanned the street. He saw the smoke in the distance first. "Fire!" someone yelled. "Grass fire comin' from the east!" Panic broke open across town as wind pushed the flames closer. Jacob reacted instantly. "Tomas, get the horses to the stone corral!" He didn't wait to see if the blacksmith followed. He kicked his horse forward and charged toward the smoke. Eliza watched him go, heart thudding. She didn't know him, but she felt, deep in her bones, that this man moved toward danger the same way others move toward comfort. As flames climbed higher, Eliza grabbed her medical bag and ran toward the people fleeing from the fire. Mothers with children, old men coughing from smoke, workers with burned arms. She dropped to her knees and got to work. A child cried while she washed a burn. A man trembled as she tied a bandage around his leg. Mrs. Harrington shouted at her to stop blocking the street. Eliza snapped back without looking up. "If you don't want to see suffering, then help me stop it." Shock rippled through the crowd. Some watched with suspicion, others with respect. But Eliza didn't have time to consider their opinions. Lives were at stake. Suddenly, the sound of wheels thundered down the road. A mining wagon came tearing through town. Water sloshed wildly in the back. Men clung to its sides. "The dam!" the driver shouted. "Rio Seco, open the gates!" Flash flood in Copper Canyon. Before anyone could react, the wagon tipped and shattered against the ground. Screams filled the air. Eliza ran without thinking. Men were pinned under planks. Horses thrashed. She threw herself beside the first injured man, pushing with all her strength until strong hands joined hers. Jacob Hart. "Lift with me," he growled. Together, they raised the timber and dragged the man free. "This one's in bad shape," Jacob said, kneeling beside a man with a twisted leg. "Get me anything straight," Eliza ordered, her voice steady. boards, rods, anything, and whiskey. For the wound, Jacob moved without hesitation. Working side by side, they treated burn after burn, wound after wound. Sweat, blood, dust, everything mixed under the desert sun. Then Eliza heard a different cry. A woman, her face pale with pain, whispered in broken Spanish, "Baby, it is time." "She's in labor," someone said. Of course she was. The world was falling apart. Why wouldn't a baby choose this moment? "Bring her to the church," Eliza said. "Boil water, tear clean cloth, move." Jacob lifted the woman with surprising gentleness and carried her, step by steady step, toward the church. Inside, Eliza worked under lamplight. Hours passed. The world outside roared with chaos, but inside those wooden walls, life fought its way into the world. At sunset, a crying baby boy filled the room. Eliza wrapped him and handed him to his mother. "He's strong," she whispered. "He'll live." Quote. She stepped outside, exhausted, covered in dust and blood. Jacob Hart stood there waiting. His clothes were torn, his face streaked with soot. His eyes met hers with a steadiness that made her chest tighten. "The husband?" she asked. "He'll live," he said, "thanks to you." "You helped," she replied softly. He shook his head. "No, you saved this town today." The desert wind rose, carrying dust between them. "Where are you staying?" Jacob asked. "I don't know yet. There's an old adobe near the water station. Roof is solid. I can help you fix it." Eliza hesitated. She came to San Judas to be independent, to stand on her own. But she also knew strength wasn't refusing help. Sometimes strength meant choosing the right ally. "Thank you, Mr. Hart," she said. "Jacob," he corrected. "Jacob Hart." A name she would come to know far too well. A name that would change everything. San Judas woke the next morning under a sky the color of bruised steel. The desert carried a strange silence, as if the land itself waited for the next blow. Eliza stood outside her small adobe, the one Jacob had helped her clean and repair through half the night. Wind tugged at her dress, carrying whispers of dust and warning. She had barely slept, not because of fear, but because of the weight of what she had seen. Flames, flood, panic, the wounds she'd stitched, the baby she'd delivered, Jacob's steady hands beside her, his quiet strength long after everyone else had fallen apart. She washed her hands in a small basin, thinking the day might bring peace. She was wrong. At dawn, she found a fence where none had stood before, thick wooden posts driven into the earth. 3 tight strands of barbed wire stretched across the community well. A fresh, cruel sign hung from the center. Rio Seco Company property. Water access by permit only. Violators will be prosecuted. Her stomach dropped. She wasn't the only one who saw it. Mothers carrying buckets froze in place. Old men stared with hollow eyes. The dust felt heavier, thicker, as if even the air refused to move past this injustice. Sheriff Coyle stepped up beside her, sipping his morning coffee like he wasn't watching people break. "New law passed last night," he said. Judge Holbrook signed it. "In the middle of the night?" Eliza snapped. "Rio Seco works fast." "This is wrong," she said. "People will die. People die anyway. But this time, Sheriff, this time it will be your fault if you enforce this." Something flickered in his eyes. Shame, weariness, but not courage. He walked away, leaving the weight on her. By noon, a line curled outside the Rio Seco office, dusty hats in hand, begging for water permits they could barely afford. Dent, the company enforcer, leaned in a chair outside, boots propped on a barrel, smirking as he turned families away. "No credit," he barked. "Cash only." When a pregnant woman stepped forward, he pretended to check his list. "Denied," he said. "Try the desert." Eliza felt a fire rise inside her, hotter than any grass blaze. "Senora," she called softly to the woman, "come to my clinic. I need help cleaning. I can pay in water." Quote, the woman's eyes filled with cautious hope. That night, more families came. They cleaned floors that were already clean. They repaired chairs that hardly wobbled. They ran errands Eliza didn't need. And she paid them in water drawn from her small supply. It wouldn't last forever, but it would save them today. Later, Sister May, dressed dusty, cheeks flushed with worry, knocked at Eliza's door. "You're playing a dangerous game," she warned. "Dangerous compared to letting people die?" Eliza asked. "Compared to drawing Rio Seco's eye." May whispered. "And Pike's." Before Eliza could answer, pounding shook the door. Jacob, supporting a sweating, shivering miner who could barely stand. "He's burning up," Jacob said, voice tight. "Half the camp is sick." Eliza placed her hand on the man's forehead. Fever, rash, dehydration. The signs were unmistakable. "Typhoid," she whispered. "From what?" Jacob asked. "Contaminated water," Eliza replied. "From forcing everyone to drink from a single source." Desperation sharpened her voice. "This is the beginning of an epidemic." Quote, "They worked all night. Eliza treated fever after fever. May helped wash wounds. Jacob carried sick men like they weighed nothing. By dawn, the clinic overflowed with the ill and dying. Eliza's hands trembled over an empty bottle. "We're running out of medicine," she whispered. "You need rest," Jacob said gently. "I need clean water," she replied. Before he could argue, someone shouted outside, "Sheriff Coyle, Dent," and 2 Rio Seco men beside them. Dent smirked. "Search warrant." "For what?" Eliza asked. "Water theft," Dent said. "Seems the widow's been giving away water she didn't pay for." Jacob stepped between them. "You don't touch her." Dent's hand drifted toward his gun. Jacob didn't move, but the air shifted around him, heavy with warning. "Let them search," Eliza whispered. The search was cruel. They counted every drop, measured every barrel, even dug fingers into the soil of her garden. Dent's smile grew. "She's over the limit. That's a $50 fine or 30 days in jail." A gasp ran through the crowd. "I'll pay it," Jacob said immediately. "No," Eliza insisted. "I won't be indebted." "It's not debt," Jacob said. His eyes held hers with quiet intensity. "It's protection." But before they could act, May stepped forward. "Her clinic is part of his operation," May said. "Subsection 12 of your own ordinance allows shared water use within a business partnership." The sheriff blinked. Dent swore under his breath. Jacob crossed his arms. "Seems legal now, doesn't it?" Quote. Dent glared. "You think you're clever." Jacob didn't blink. "I know I am." That night, San Judas learned the truth. Typhoid spread faster. People were terrified, and Eliza realized the sickness wasn't just disease, it was a weapon. Rio Seco had trapped them, forcing everyone into contaminated spaces. She paced her clinic, consumed by fury. "We need clean water sources," Eliza said. "Any we can get." "There is one," a soft voice said. Ashki, the young Navajo guide, stepped into the firelight. "I know the old water paths," he said. "Springs the company does not know." He led them into the dawn desert, past dead mesquite and red stone. At a cluster of rocks, he knelt and placed his hand on the earth. "Here," he said, "dig 3 feet." They dug, and water seeped up, clean, cold, blessed. Eliza exhaled a sob of relief. Hope tasted like water. They used it to treat the sick. Dozens recovered. Families whispered Eliza's name like a prayer. But Dent watched from the shadows, and Pike heard every whisper. 3 days later, Judge Holbrook signed another ordinance. Medical clinics now required expensive permits. It was a message: conform or be crushed. Eliza looked at the sick sleeping in her clinic, Maria with her newborn, Tomas with crushed ribs, children barely breathing. She lifted her chin, eyes burning with determination. "I came here to heal," she whispered. "Let the company try to stop me." For the first time, Jacob touched her hand. "You're not alone this time," he said quietly. His thumb traced her knuckles. Her pulse stumbled. "Together," he said. She didn't pull away. Outside, storm clouds gathered over San Judas. Everything was about to break. The storm rolled over San Judas like a beast with 1,000 teeth. Thunder cracked across the sky as if the heavens themselves were splitting apart. Eliza stood at the door of her clinic, watching lightning streak across the mountains. Jacob was saddling his horse just outside, jaw set with unshakable resolve. Federal marshals had just arrived in town. Rio Seco was cornered, and Pike was dangerous. Days earlier, the documents Eliza, May, Jacob, and Ashke sent to Denver had exploded across the territory. Corruption, stolen water rights, death caused by neglect. Now, federal marshals walked the streets of San Judas with authority Rio Seco could not buy. But Pike wasn't done. That night, he acted. May's scream ripped through the dark. Eliza dropped everything and sprinted barefoot across the street. Behind the clinic, by the storage shed, she saw Dent and 2 hired men pinning May to the dirt, hands over her mouth. Dent stood watching, arms crossed. "Evening, Widow Quinn," Dent drawled. "Seems your friend's been writing letters she shouldn't." Eliza raised Jacob's rifle. She aimed with a steadiness she didn't feel. "Let her go!" "You gonna shoot us all?" Dent mocked. "I don't think you've got the spine for it." He nodded at his men. "Break her hands!" The rifle cracked. Dent's hat flew off. A neat bullet hole burned clean through the crown. Eliza chambered another round. "The next one goes through your skull." Even in the moonlight, she saw fear slide into his eyes. The men released May, backing away with trembling hands. Dent snarled, "This ain't over." "It is," Eliza said coldly. "Understand this. You touch her again, you die." He stumbled into the shadows, defeated for now. Jacob ran to them, breath ragged, eyes blazing with fear. He checked May carefully, then looked at Eliza with something deeper than admiration. "You stood up to Dent," he whispered. "I protected my own." He cupped her cheek. "You're braver than anyone I've ever known." For one heartbeat, only one, they leaned close enough for their breaths to meet. But there was no time for what that moment wanted. Not yet. By dawn, the whole truth broke open. Holbrook, guilty Judge Rio Seco puppet, was found lying on the road with a head wound, half conscious. Jacob and Ashke dragged him to safety. He begged Eliza for forgiveness before dying, and then gasped out a final confession. "Letters in my office. Pike paid me. Every ruling, every death. Get the letters before he burns them." San Judas didn't wait. The town rose. Chinese families, Mexican families, miners, mothers, schoolteachers, farmers, Navajo families. Every person Rio Seco had crushed for years gathered under the church, in the hidden caves Sister May revealed. For the first time, San Judas stood united. Jacob spoke with quiet power. "We take back the water, tonight." It wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was justice. That night, they approached the reservoir, Rio Seco's stronghold. The massive wheel at the gate was chained shut, controlled by Pike's orders alone. Tomas lifted bolt cutters. "Ready?" Eliza placed her hand over his. "For every parent who watched a child die," she whispered. "For every family denied water. For every person Pike crushed." Quote. The chain snapped. Together, the townspeople turned the wheel. It groaned, resisted, then gave way. Water burst forth, not a flood, but a controlled river, flowing back into the ancient channels Rio Seco had stolen. The town, watching from rooftops and hilltop paths, roared, but their triumph froze at the sound of approaching riders. Pike, his men. Guns drawn. He pulled his horse to a stop in front of them, his hair wild from the wind, his eyes blazing with grief and fury. "You fools!" Pike shouted. "You have no idea what you've done!" Quote. Eliza stepped forward, Jacob at her side. "We've returned water to its rightful owners." Pike's voice broke. "You think you understand? You don't know a damn thing." He pointed toward the river. "My wife died because people fought over water. My daughter, 6 years old, was trampled by men who wanted a bucket more than her life." The crowd fell silent. Pike shook with rage and pain. "So yes, I controlled everything. I controlled the courts, the water, the law. Because without control, people kill each other. You think you're different. One drought, one dry season, and you will tear each other apart. No, Eliza said softly, we will not. You will, he hissed, because you're human. No, Jacob said firmly, because we are together. Pike pointed his gun at Eliza. This all started with you. Before he could pull the trigger, a voice called, "Lower your weapon, Mr. Pike." Federal marshals stepped out of the darkness, guns raised. Bartholomew Pike was finished. His men looked at each other, at the united town, then slowly lowered their weapons. Only Dent stayed loyal. But when he saw Pike surrender, even he backed away, disappearing into the desert night. Pike turned himself over without a word. As the marshals led him away, he paused beside Eliza. "There is no mercy in the desert," he whispered. "Remember that." Eliza met his broken gaze. "There is, if we create it." Days later, in a federal courtroom, Pike was sentenced, his company dismantled, water rights returned to the people. Every face in San Judas watched justice be served. But the story did not end in that courtroom. It ended at the well. Night had fallen when the town gathered for a water blessing. Father Martinez prayed in Spanish, English, and Navajo. Children ran barefoot in puddles. Neighbors shared food. Families embraced. Eliza stood among them, breathing in the scent of wet earth. Jacob stepped quietly beside her. "You did it," he said. "We did it," she corrected. He touched her hand. She didn't pull away. "San Judas survived because you refused to bend," Jacob said. "Because you fought even when you were terrified." "And you stood with me," she whispered. He smiled, a rare, beautiful thing. "I'm done hiding from life, Eliza. And I'm done running from mine." His hand slid around her waist. Her breath caught. The town celebrated behind them. Music rising, water running, life beginning again. Jacob's voice dipped low, warm against her ear. "You said you didn't want to depend on anyone. But maybe we can depend on each other." For the first time in her life, she let herself lean into someone, trusting him, trusting herself. As the lanterns glowed and water shimmered in the moonlight, Jacob pulled her gently closer. Her heart pounded, wild and free. And she laughed, a soft, breathless sound, as he held her tight, strong enough that she knew he'd never let her fall. In the town that once dried her spirit, she finally bloomed. And Jacob Hart, scarred and loyal, kissed her like a man who had waited his whole life for a woman brave enough to fight beside him. San Judas had found its freedom. Eliza had found her future.